Good morning, everyone. We'd like to start at noon, so if you would like to take your seats, we'll get started here momentarily. While you're getting comfortable, I'd ask you to silence any electronic devices that you might have with you today. Good morning, everyone. My name is Curtis Eckelman. I'll be serving as the moderator today for our 2023 Mainline Unitarian Church Annual Congregation Meeting. First of all, good morning. I'd like to thank all of you who are here in person today, and I'd also like to thank those who voted on the issues through the absentee system. First thing I'd like to do is call the meeting to order. It's 12 o'clock, and so we'll get started. First thing we need to do is get our quorum count, and I think Rich was going to have that done from the sign-in sheets. There he goes. So, and also congratulations to Rich on his retirement. It was a great party out there for him, and he hasn't fully retired as he's still working on the quorum count. All right, I'm hearing that we have the correct number of folks here for our quorum. All right, so I would like to introduce Reverend David Messner, our interim senior minister, for the minister's report.
I am pleased to report to you that the church is vital. The church is alive. The church is growing. The church is a wonderful church. You have good things ahead of you. You have enormous gifts within you, and you have surprises in your future I wish I could see with you. Bless you.
All right. Thank you, Reverend Dave. Now I would like to ask Yusara to come up and give the trustees' report, please.
Good afternoon. Before I get to the trustees' report, let me address a question I've gotten a couple times in the past month. Everyone's leaving. Is it because of you? To that I say maybe, but definitely not the staff. I take no responsibility for the staff. I know you want to get to the budget soon. Look at line item 46. Says trustees will now get paid. So I won't take the whole time. I'll be honest, it was a slow board year, which is luxury. It's not a bad thing. We conducted business as usual. The products you laid out for us in the bylaws have been met. We even had several retreats. The bottom line you want to know, was there progress made with respect to money and members? Otherwise known as every vision of ministry ever, in history of visions, in future visions? And the answer is yes. We delivered your products. One of our visions of ministry is to help transition the new minister. So always forward thinking, which is one of the functions of the board. Progress was not just made in a quantitative way, however. There was a lot of focus internally on applying the mission to and for our existing members, including lay leaders, as well as outreach and external work. More on that next week. Strategy, it's a primary function of the board. Strategic planning, monitoring, evaluating, it's what we do. We made strides on a core initiative, giving it the attention it deserves this year. You know, when you have free time and you think about naming conventions of the board, as one does, this is important, and I'll let you think about it on your own time. Our primary initiative was called Project Fortify, renamed from Project Iceberg. That is significant, and I want you to think about its implications. It's a big deal. Essentially, it's looking at how to keep us alive and well. And those are two separate goals, and it's the board's function, responsibility to make sure they're not mutually exclusive. In the midst of a lot of change, I'll describe the board's current state as a mixture of two phases simultaneously. You know, Bose-Einstein condensates? No. For the non-nerds among us, the first word is a word borrowed from that powerhouse of a human being, Michelle O. Michelle wrote a book before this last one entitled Becoming. The second word is from that our powerhouse of fabulousness, Dr. Frankenfurter, anticipation. And we are somewhere in between. There's a name for that that gets tossed around in UEA world a lot. Anybody know what that is? Liminal? Yeah. I don't like that word. It has a sad connotation. I like possibility. That's where we are. I like that better. It took a lot of change to get us to this point. Meaningful change is brought about only by upsetting cultural, deep-rooted, systematic structures. You've heard that before. There had to be disruption. Deeds, not creeds. We're in a good place. That coming together of a lot of different pieces makes this liminal space full of hope and possibility. I have 6 factors. We have a continuing DRE. Caroline Bright continues with us. A new DFO, a new Griselda, a new Kaylee. A fabulous new slate of trustees, except I don't know how Barbara Colton got on there, but I said, Leslie, don't do it. And she said, you know, this slate cost me a lot in vacations and real estate. We have you. You show up when you want for things and people and causes that you support and love, like you did last Sunday. And last but not least, we have a new guy starting in August. It's not a coincidental mix of ingredients, variables, components. These seeds of change have been sown in healthy soil. We're in a great place for healthy growth. Allow me a gardening metaphor. It's only possible if any weeds, poisonous, life-threatening, toxic weeds, have been removed and incinerated. We are in a good place for serving our mission as an entity, a group on the same page, shared leadership. Nothing can be accomplished otherwise. You know how people say, how many people does it take to change the world? And everyone says 1. Not in board land, not with board work. It takes everyone being on board, or at least a quorum. You get nothing done otherwise. We are there. We're looking forward to meaningful, progressive change and serving our mission as a group. Thank you. Now, Rich Fritzen will present the budget for the last time.
Somebody's phone gonna go off? Oh, okay, I'll leave it then. I'm gonna go over the budget for the last time. That's a promise, right? So as is my practice, I'm not going to put the 4-page spreadsheet that is the budget up on the screen. I prefer to tell the story of this budget, but if I start right now with this budget, I'll be starting the story in the middle. So I want to back up a little bit. First, is a thing that most of leaders know, most of people who've been here more than 20 years know, that we have been through about 20 years very slowly declining membership in terms of numbers. I'm not going to put up any of the notorious slides that illustrate this. It's not the topic of the meeting. They're a bit of a bummer anyway. But what the church's leadership is doing, everything they do, from hiring a developmental minister to preparing a budget like this one, is about reversing that trend. This is the second year that we are proposing a budget with deficit spending. That is, we're planning to spend more money than we take in the coming year. We're going to invest the extra money into staff and activities which are designed to grow the church. Last year, at this time, we had about 5 months of operating expenses in our checkbook, which is, well, it was more than we needed. You can feel pretty safe with 3 months of expenses in your checkbook. 5 was something we'd never seen before. So we made the decision to, over 2 years, invest the extra money, the extra 2 months in these activities. Last year, we spent about $80,000 to $90,000 more than we brought in. This year, it's going to be close to $100,000. I want to make it clear, this is not money, we're not borrowing this money, it's our money, it's money from the checkbook, and we're investing it in the future growth of this church. Last year, we expanded our membership function from part-time to full-time, hired Madeline Seiko. We hired a part-time communications staff person. Kaylee here? She left. Okay, most of you appreciate the great job she's doing with the e-notes. What I appreciate is that every week she's filling social media with great photos and short videos so that lots of people who are not here can discover us online. This is really helping us in terms of bringing more people in through our front doors. This year we're going to continue the overspending. Those people are still on staff. We also have made room for hiring a part-time professional youth person to build up a youth program again to attract to the church families with youth, families with future youth. And the plan at the end of this year is to leave us with just the expected 3 months of operating expenses in the checkbook, safe and sound. There's nothing really risky about this activity. I should mention that at the board's strong urging, this budget includes a 5% cost of living adjustment for the continuing staff, which we should all appreciate. Yes, it doesn't include me. I can applaud. I am not continuing staff. There are various other tweaks and adjustments. The board's authorized the use of the building reserve to do life-extending maintenance of our capital assets. So that includes repairs on our very large and complex air conditioning heat pump system. The amount authorized really amounts to less than the interest earned on the reserve. So we're not depleting the reserve doing this maintenance work. The big question is, what's going to happen a year from now when we don't have spare cash to invest in these people that we've hired? Where are we going to find the money a year from now to run at this level? And of course, I'd like to say, well, you're just all going to step up and raise your pledges by $100,000, and that could happen. But I should also say that my successor, who you met earlier, is right now scouring our budget, looking for opportunities to save money, looking for opportunities to find new income, and he's really good at this. So I've already seen that at a minimum, there are thousands or tens of thousands of dollars coming out of this. At a maximum, we have the odds of making up the full $100,000 and more over the next year or two. Can I see the slides? I've forgotten what I put on them. Oh, yeah. This is not a very interesting slide, but what you're seeing are the amount of pledge income in each year. So in 2016, 2017, pledge income was flat. You see it drop a little bit in 2018, 2019. It's actually declining in 2020. And this is the very tail end of what I mentioned at the open, a 20-year decline in these things. You see that there's a $100,000 bump in 2021. That came from you. That was a response to our asking at the beginning of the pandemic, if you are not affected by the pandemic, please add a little bit more to your pledge this year so that the people who are affected, who are afraid for their income, can ease up on their pledge a bit. Everybody stepped up. That $100,000 is one of the $100,000 in excess cash we happen to have. You just gave it to the church that year. The following year, back to normal. And this year, although we're estimating, because we haven't received everything yet, it looks like it's going up a little bit. It's not a lot to cheer about, this tiny increase at the end, but what's interesting is the story the numbers tell underneath. I just want to show you this little bit of nerdy business. So far, we have received 234 pledges for about $625,000. 44 of those pledges were decreases. And these were fairly large pledges. The average was around $1,400. The largest decrease was a $14,000 decrease. About 20% of these were decreases down to zero. And this could be, as you might imagine, because someone died or moved away, or they just felt like their financial situation was too precarious. On the other hand, there were 108 increases. And while it didn't quite match the 64,000 in decreases, it came close. It came close, $59,000, and these were smaller pledges, lots of them, adding up to, well, as I said, almost matching the decreases. 20% of these were brand new pledges. They were either new members or people who had not been pledging for the last 4 or 5 years. The numbers here represent a real shift from depending on a few large pledges to a larger number of more modest pledges. This is a really healthy trend, and we'd like to see it continue over the next few years. Can we overcome the changes? Can we come up with the next $50,000 to $100,000? I think we can. I think each one of you has the ability to help us grow this just a little bit more. So I present to you another year of deficit spending, another year investing in the growth of this church. I hope you'll vote for it. You're going to lead questions?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Rich. Okay, the way this is going to work, I hope everybody is familiar with this process, but if you're not, Rich has presented the budget. He's now prepared to answer questions. If there are, after the questions and answers, we'll vote, and then we'll move on. So, questions and answers. Oh, sorry, we have microphones for anybody that would like to ask a question. All right, if there are no questions. Oh, sorry.
Does that amount include what goes in the basket on Sundays?
No, basket money, unless it's designated as a pledge payment. The basket money is, here, can you take this? Thanks. is for the offering, not counted here.
There was a question in the back, all the way in the back, in the middle section. Oh, sorry.
Rich, you mentioned a membership increases. Could you give me those numbers, please?
I'm not sure. Could you ask it again?
You said the budget went up, or the income went up, and the membership went up this year.
Then I probably misspoke. Membership has been relatively flat, which is a good thing, because for years it's been declining year after years, and we have stopped declining, but it's pretty much steady. We do have a number of new members. I don't know the exact number offhand. They're a little bit balanced by a few departures and several deaths. I don't have exact numbers for you on membership.
Okay. Thank you, Rich. Thanks for the questions. So if there are no further questions, I would like to get somebody to make a motion to approve the budget. We have a motion to approve the budget. I'd like to take the vote to approve the budget. Oh, sorry. Dylan had seconded. I didn't acknowledge that. Forgive me for that. So we have a motion and a second. We'd like to vote now to approve the fiscal year budget. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimous. Next on our agenda is our nominating committee review report, and Leslie Bass will be giving us that report.
Thank you, very generous. Thank you, Curtis. Good afternoon, and I just want to warn you ahead of time that my presentation is not particularly spontaneous and it contains no metaphors. So you'll just have to bear with me. Actually, this is a really important part of what happens here today, because you are electing the people that you have chosen, you are choosing to lead your church in very important ways. So I want you to appreciate the fact it's not a formality, it's really essential, and we appreciate all of you being here and those who have already voted. So I'll proceed with my talk. Annually, the MLUC Nominating Committee fulfills its responsibility to secure nominees for any required elected positions of the church. This year, they include 7 positions in the Board of Trustees and 2 in the Nominating Committee. Typically, 3 nominees of the Board of Trustees are sought annually. This year, 4 additional nominees were brought forward to fulfill ongoing vacancies in the board. The total 9 nominees for election in 2023 were introduced to the congregation on May the 7th, 2023, through posting of their biographies on the church website, in the notes of the week, and in the church atrium. Each nominee has achieved and exceeded the required 20 member signature endorsements and are now candidates eligible for election today at this congregational meeting. In accordance with the MLUC bylaws, these are elected positions of the church upon which the congregation votes, consistent with our 5th principle that confirms and promotes the use of the democratic process. The task of selecting nominees is lengthy and thoughtful, extending over the church year. It includes invitations to the congregation to provide names of members for consideration, careful review by the nominating committee of each potential nominee's qualifications for the given position, and personal interviews. The nominating committee wishes to express our regards and heartfelt thanks to all the members who offered to be considered for any of the elected positions, whether or not being selected as a nominee. We recognize your talents and generosity and are grateful for your willingness to serve within our faith community. Thank you. Now, the nominating committee is honored to present the following candidates for election today: Barbara Colton, Deirdre Gordon, and John Smith to serve 3-year terms on the Board of Trustees. Filling vacancies in the Board of Trustees: Carol Hillman, Nancy McDowell, and Barbara Welsh to serve 2-year terms, and Joe Lipton to serve a 1-year term. Jess Michael and Betsy Plume to serve 3-year positions on the nominating committee. If you're here, nominees, would you stand for a moment? Just so everybody could see you again. The nominating committee is confident that all the MLUC candidates named here are dedicated to assuming and carrying out their respective positions once elected, and are eager to bring their best efforts to the tasks ahead. We congratulate them on their candidacies. And now, I turn it back to Curtis, who will conduct the vote. Oh, are the questions?
Yeah, first we'll take questions and answers. All right, I don't see anybody. So can I get a motion to approve the slate for the candidates that have been named for the nominating committee? And the Board of Trustees. We've got a motion. Can I get a second? Thank you. I'd like to take the vote now. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite Yusara to come up, talk about our proposed bylaw changes.
So gardening, no. On the back of your agenda is a summary sheet of the bylaw changes, the summary of the proposed amendments to the bylaws. Yep. The full packet that was sent through email had the old language, the new language, and some rationale for the proposed changes. I'm just going to read to you the summary, explain how this is different from the quorum needed for the budget that you just voted on and the nom-com slate. Your bylaws needs 20%. That would be 96 yes votes for any changes to be made to the bylaws. We separated it by 3 articles. You'll be voting 6 times. We're asking you to consider changing section 1 of Article 4, which was a spelling error. We're asking you to consider notice of meetings, for email to be added as a way to notify the congregation. In Article 5, we're asking for Section 4 for you to consider reducing the number of members from 9 to 7, starting in fiscal year 2024-25. And reference that the senior minister is an ex officio member of the board. This was covered in Article 8. We are proposing a change to directors. The word directors is listed in the bylaws. Nowhere else change it to board members. Article 8, the ministers. We are proposing the board hire a senior minister, that is one who is not called. In the absence of a called senior minister, the senior minister may hire other ministers with consent of the board, which is what happens now. Wasn't in the language. We are asking that the senior minister and designated ministers The change makes the senior minister, and designated ministers ex officio members of the board and all committees elected by the congregation except for the search committee. Questions? Yes, can I have Rich, hang on, let me get my team in place. Can Rich and Reverend Dave, and so that we could better field your questions.
I just wanted to ask about section 4, that adding email as a way to notify the congregation. That would not be the only way that the congregation is notified.
No,
Email would be an additional way that people are notified, but if you don't have email, you would still get information.
right, that was just an addition.
Hi. Can you explain why, or the benefit that you think will be derived from reducing the number of board members from 9 to 7?
Yes, there's several reasons. First, it's more effective. A larger board does not best fit the congregation size that we have. For smaller churches, fellowships that have less people, quite frankly, they have more to do. They need more members to get more involved in operational responsibilities. To put it bluntly, we have people for that. We don't need people to oversee finances the way a smaller church might. That number is just found to be more effective for what we need our members to do, which is, quite frankly, don't have anything to give them to do that a smaller church would need. Anybody else want to jump in on a smaller size? Jess?
I'll just jump in. So, our governance model is based on policy governance. So we have, as Sarah said, a staff that does a lot of the operations of the church on a day-to-day basis. It's not close enough. There we go. So the board really works on policy. And like Sarah said, less people. I will say that when I joined the board so many years ago, one of the things we looked at the very beginning was reducing the size of the board from 9 to 7. And so we've talked about it for a long time, and I'm really excited that you guys are actually asking the congregation to approve it.
Thank you, Jess. Delete, you have a question? No. Oh, okay.
The other thing is, like Sarah said, when the church is small, a lot of the board members are doing the administrative work. And so it's counterintuitive. As you grow, you hire the staff and you need less board members. So that was one of the main reasons to go from 9 to 7.
Can you hand the mic to Carrie?
If the board is reduced from 9 to 7, would that mean that we do not elect any new board members at this meeting next year? And if so, given the focus on youth and attracting and retaining families with youth in them, is there any concern about the level of representation of families with youth on the board?
No? Rich?
Did we decide that it was only one person this year or 3?
I don't think we...
So the larger question is, when you have 9 members, every year you replace 3. When you have 7 members, what is the plan? Right now, by default, because if you noticed, we elected, I think, 6 board members just now. Was it 7? And they're elected to a variety of terms. I think 3 roll off next June. If you actually plot it out, you'll see that 3 members of the board, right, but there are three members there now who will also be coming off, will actually drop to 6. You may need to elect 1 next year. So there will be 1 elected next year, 3 the following year, assuming there's no interruption due to having a president run for 2 years. So it'll quickly find its own rhythm. But you will elect people next year, and you will elect them the year after.
Rick Torres. I just wondered if you guys can share how it's going to work with 7 in terms of year to year. Like say 3 people work, say you were doing 3-2-2. I don't know what your plan is, but if you're doing 3-2-2, 3 come off and only 2 go on, now you're down 1 person. Is that something that you already have a specific plan in place for?
This year, it'll find its own rhythm, like Rich said. This year, we're gonna have 10. Because I'm staying on for a second year, it will work the same way. You'll go up to 8 max. Were you gonna say something, Rich?
So, as the governance committee, we looked at it and we decided to put it on the parking lot. And this year the board will look at it and we will go in 3-2-2 rotation. And it may take a couple of years, but that's what we will do.
Another question right there.
Hi, my name is Ron Cordes. I want to preface my remarks by saying I'm not sure I understand why we're even looking at the bylaws right now. We just hired a development minister, part of whose job is to come in and help us look at everything we do and how we do it with respect to, is this really what we want to do? Is this erecting barriers on the basis of race or gender expression or class? Surely that is going to require changes to the bylaws. Why are we doing this now instead of just folding it in to whatever the development minister is going to do? And I have a follow-up.
Thank you, Ron. So understand, so I'm your transition minister and have come and we've done 2 years of work together. And so we haven't been waiting to do transition work. There are 2 different kinds of transition ministries. Shorter ones we call interims, longer ones we call developmentals. John and I are a 1-2 sequence of continuing work. The remit on which you recruited John was shaped among me, the transition team, and the board and the search committee. So it's continuing work. This is the culmination of key work that we've been doing strategically for 2 years, and there's a reason for each of it. So we're going to keep moving forward step by step. It doesn't happen all at once. We've chosen to another, what might be 3 to 7 years, but we've accomplished things, and this is part of what we believe is helpful to accomplish in advance of your next settled minister. Much of what I was doing, and the job, is to disrupt or shift certain patterns in preparation for a settled minister. Now it's a developmental minister, but nothing was waiting. And I'm happy to speak to why I believe as a transition and accredited interim minister, these are changes that are consistent with your strategy, consistent with your governance model, and consistent with what a colleague starting in a church will expect.
Thank you, Reverend Dave.
That sounded awfully passionate. I didn't mean it quite that way. This is the most important thing. But I think they're smart changes, but I'm happy to talk. That's what I'm trying to say.
The main reason I rise is I am strongly opposed to the changes in Section 3, responsibility of the ministers. In the old language, the last sentence ends with ex officio non-voting member of the board and elected committees accepting the nominating committee and may attend all meetings of the board not held in executive session. The new language deletes both of those. I've been on a lot of nonprofit boards and a lot of church boards, some of which had the new language. that's okay in 90% of the cases. I mean, I learned in doing business, what you put in a contract is not for when things are going well, it's for when they're going really badly. And the board needs to be able to go into executive session from time to time with no one else in the room. I think especially if they're deciding whether or not to terminate the called minister, which happens. I mean, it happened in the church next to us, and it tore the church apart. So, number one, I would recommend not taking out that not held in executive session. And number two, accepting the nominating committee. Again, I've been on quite a few boards where the board appoints the nominating committee, and then the nominating committee nominates members for the board. This is almost that close. You have the minister having an effect on who's nominated to be on the board, which oversees the minister. I mean, I think that's too tight a circle. Now, Mr. Moderator, my intent is, I don't want to say let's vote against this, but my intent is to move to indefinitely postpone it so that we can go through this with the new minister. And I would request, I don't want to do that now because it cuts off debate, but I would request the ability to stand up and make that motion just before we vote on these articles. Thank you.
Please.
So this is a pretty deep topic. Thank you, Ron. There's good insight in there. I'm going to take a couple of minutes. Part of the deep work we're trying to do here is to recover from a history of rupture, misconduct, and mistrust between the lay leadership and the minister. So it is not atypical to hear the language, particularly from post-fellowship congregations, if you know about the fellowship movement, where they hire the minister and say, okay, who's going to supervise them? Okay, and what do we do if they do wrong? And in churches that have been hurt, and I think some of us here have been hurt in prior ministries. It's real. I'm not sure that we've done all the work we need to do around healing with that. But I will say, and I'm being outspoken, I do feel passionate about it because this is my life's work, and I'm leaving you. So honestly, it's not my cat in the fire. Is that the saying? No. It's not, I don't have a pony in the race. That's not what it is. Not cat in the fire. Right, that was the other thing. Okay, I get confused. No, seriously, I am your advisor. I am your interim minister who consults you on this. I am telling you, you have hurt and rupture by virtue of misconduct in the past, some of which resulted in terminations, but you have multiple kinds of ministerial misconduct in your past, which has generated patterns of mistrust and mechanisms which protect against being hurt again, that are codified in the congregation. Our aspiration is one of shared ministry. So when we look at not small fellowships and how they run with hireling ministers, but large churches running under a policy model that appoint the minister as the chief executive, how they lead and succeed. They do it through close shared ministry and trusting board-minister relationships. The contract you sign, for instance with me, says the language they are about sitting on all committees ex officio. Ex officio is a word, what, Pig Latin? Ex officio is a word that means by virtue of position. I'm being funny, but not funny, because people think that has some particular other meaning than by virtue of position. So it's a mechanical appointment. Then there's an additional piece of language that's necessary in any contract that says voting or non-voting. One can be an ex officio member, which means you'll always sit there. Anyway, so we have a standard set of ministerial contracts that we've been negotiated, UUMA and UUA. They include this language. And so you have some choices, and you've made the choice, you have several choices. You've made the choice to be a policy church. You've made the choice to contract with your minister as the chief executive officer, given certain boundaries and given certain ends, and to run things. In churches with your chief executive officer, you don't do the grown-up business with the chief executive officer out of the room. If you need to fire the chief executive officer, don't worry, the executive team on the board will talk and get that done. And this isn't governing that. It really isn't. At moments when you crash, when the plane is in crisis, don't worry, the people talk and they can call the meeting. Executive session is not fundamentally excluding your CEO. So executive decisions can be made. You don't ask all the people who have the information to leave the room. You truly don't in large companies. Now, separate matters. Hiring, firing, compensation of the chief executive. That's why boards form assigned committees that take care of that for those of you in corporate spaces or anything else, because obviously, you know, you need some breakout to do that. I've encouraged this team to reinforce the officer group as a decision-making body when those occasions come up. You do not have a history of ever discussing ministerial compensation. I don't think, other than cost of living, you've given your ministers raises in the past. Someone can tell me if that's wrong, but I think that's decades of truth. That's kind of odd, isn't it? Might that have something to do with retention? Maybe. I don't know. You've worked in different places. So I'm going to say, okay, so every year this officer team has to talk about annual review. There's some obligations of that when you have a transition minister, compensation and retention adjustment. And if something goes sideways, including, I mean, a claim of abuse. You know, we have had misconduct in this church, and I just point to the world of abuse. I want that executive team to meet and to act. All bullshit aside, I talked about rapid response. The team will meet and act. We will have a safe church. So I really support a new model in which we're really conscious, trauma conscious, that there have been boundary crossings in the past, and that some of our responses were built to make sure bad stuff doesn't happen. And I'm encouraging you to play to win, and your minister is your partner, and we're here to help. And if it goes sideways, it goes sideways. That's marriage too. You know, I could talk to you about prenuptial agreements, but okay, I'm going to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Hi, I'm Steve Rhodes, and I've been a member of the nominating committee. This was when Neil Jones was here, and he came in. It was very divisive at that point. He did have input to the nominating committee. I actually passed through a couple of the people that he... Oh, you hear it better? Ah, now, okay. All right. Anyhow, I was on the nominating committee when Neil Jones was here, and he came in. It was extremely divisive in church at that point. He did pass people through to the nominating committee, and he was not at any of the meetings, which was fine. I liked it better that way because you could actually talk freer. One of the problems that you have putting a minister on there is they're there permanently while everybody else filters through. So they have, just by doing that, they have a lot more power, which is a problem. Secondly, the one that was extremely divisive, very, very possible that he could have packed the house over time. You would not have known it. And by the time you did know it, it could be too late. So I would suggest not including this one.
Additional discussion? All right.
Can I add just one tiny thing on that, which is, again, are we playing to win, or are we playing defense against bad actors? I think it's also notable that the minister doesn't vote on anything, and here's what my experience has told me, is that over the long term, the ability to pack the court, people you choose, they bite you on the elbow 5 years later. It's very hard. You don't control. It's not the same as other systems where there's money at play, and it happens so slow, and the committee itself has the vote, not the minister. I'll tell you the thing, and the ministers, typically at churches that don't include the minister deeply in the conversation, the private conversation, always solicit, like here, and the nominating committee has been wonderful here, and actually very accessible and open and everything else, so there's no critique I have here. But they ask it more from the constructive. Do you have a person you think would be good? That seems like a very reasonable thing. I'm going to say something tough. which is that in cultivating talent, moving talent forward, the appropriateness of people to different roles is a matter of judgment and involves knowing the people. So if you know, as the pastor, that someone's struggling with addiction right now, it might not be the time to put them in this elected office. Or if you know someone has some challenges and they say, they're going to be working in the classroom, then you have a kind of quiet duty to move people to places of fit and talent. So that feels sensitive, but it's honestly what we do because you know things. And so you can merely say, so what I'm saying is there's a little bit of a power of the veto there, that this isn't neutral town politics. We're trying to fit people, talent to appropriate roles in church. And I don't know if you see it, but all the time we're steering someone to something that's suited to their gifts. And someone says, I'll do it, I'll drive the truck. And you have a moment and you say, well, no, we don't let them drive the truck. You can ride right in the side and be the navigator. Some of that steering in church is how we get everyone with a job. I'll stop, but there's a subtle pastoral role there that is not about mechanics, but subtly getting talent and cultivating talent to the right place. And that's
Yes, John Smith, just speaking to one of the proposed changes. We're a little hamstrung because the summary, the one-sheet summary of proposed changes doesn't really do justice to all the changes that we have been shown. And I just want to underscore one of them, and that is that although the summary doesn't say so, the new language in section 3 is that the senior minister and any called ministers shall be ex officio non-voting members. And I hope that will take the edge off some of the concern that's been expressed here today. Yes, they'll be members of the committee. No, they won't be voting.
How does it work? Just put it, okay. If the minister were not a member of the nominating committee, which, does that prohibit still in the interview, when you're considering getting information from the minister in any way? I mean, so it sort of seems like the role of the minister on that committee is just to give information.
I can help you with that.
Okay.
Okay, so being on the nominating committee, this is the end of my 3rd year. I've thought about this a little bit, and sometimes it's hard to imagine something before you actually are experiencing, which is, I think, is part of the difficulty here. I could appreciate some things that are being said about how this proposed change fits into a long-term strategy, of which I don't have full appreciation. But I could tell you something about having served on the nominating committee. The nominating committee feels beholden to the congregation, not to anybody else. You elected us to find qualified people to be nominees for election, so we feel beholden to you. To answer your question, when we have our slate that we feel pretty good about, we pass it by the minister. We pass it by the the president of the board of directors, of trustees. So we don't do this in a vacuum. And there's always the opportunity at any time to expand that. We don't have to wait until we have a full slate. We could talk to the minister at any time. But ultimately, it's our decision because you elected us to do this. So I'm kind of tending toward it as a proposed change, but I think that the nominating committee itself will have to figure out how they will handle that. I mean, they will have times to communicate with the minister. The minister could be at some of their meetings, but not necessarily every meeting. I think this will be a work in progress. I don't know how that settles with you or other people. And it's a change. It is a change, but I think it could be something that we grow into. Thank you.
My name is Norma Winther, and I've been around here for a long time. I was involved in, I don't know whether I dare admit it, but I helped bring policy governance to our board. And I served on the board as someone who supposedly knew what policy governance was all about. That's a long time ago. I've also served on the nominating committee. And over all these years that I've been involved, our church has been a board-led church, not a minister-led church. The board called the minister to be the CEO who reported to the board each month. And the board monitored, was the minister doing what he said he would be doing, or she. The report was to reflect what they said they would do and how well they were doing what they said they would do. But we've always been led by the congregation, and I worry if we change that and have a minister in charge of all of us. Unitarians, you know, we always say that we're a bunch of individuals, we do our own thing. How will we function with someone as a leader to whom we owe some kind of obligation? This worries me.
Hi, Rick Jors. I'm currently on the nominating committee, and I'll just kind of share my thoughts on it as Leslie did. I see the ex officio board member as a positive thing. If they're non-voting member, right now we have a board member who participates in nominating committee just to stay in the loop. I think it's a matter of communication. When I was on the board, at times it felt like you didn't have a team. You want your board to be collaborating and being a team with your minister. And I think this is part of leading us toward that. It's just making sure that they're hearing, they're part of the discussion, they can feed you ideas, not necessarily making it insular so that it's whoever the minister wants so much or whoever the board wants to feed in there. There is maybe that danger, but if there is a danger of insularity, I think it comes from the fact that we don't have high enough levels of participation from the congregation, honestly. We open it up to the congregation every year to list and elicit names, and we don't get a lot. And that might just be that the congregation is very trusting of the committee itself, of the board, and that they're putting it, implicitly saying, to do what you think is best. But if there is a danger, I think, of insularity where it's just a small group of people who all are like-minded, sort of engineering a way forward, that has to be addressed through congregational involvement. And I feel like I'm coming off overly critical. I know this is an extremely involved congregation. I'm more just talking about this one small piece in terms of nominating and electing and saying, hey, here's who I think would be a great person for the board. Here's who I think would be a good person for these positions. We're kind of quiet when it comes time to put forward names as a congregation.
Is it time to make a motion?
Well, there has to be a motion to end discussion, unless we're going to just continue with discussion. There's no time limit on discussion.
It's my understanding that ex officio are not voting members of the committee. Is that right?
Sorry, say that again?
Can ex officio members vote if they're on a committee?
Can I say something?
Sure.
Ex officio means you're a member because of your position, by virtue of your office.
Yes.
However, each time we say ex officio, we also add non-voting. It doesn't include non-voting, but non-voting is a part of each clause that mentions ex officio.
And is that a part of the clause in the new?
It is.
It is.
They are non-voting members.
Okay. And when the board goes into executive member meeting, can they exclude anybody who's not a voting member if they choose to?
Yes, executive sessions are exclusive. We can invite people if we want, but you have to be a voting member. So yes.
Okay.
No? You cannot? We're gonna have to get back to you on that. Again. Executive sessions cannot exclude ex officio members. To check the language. Yes, Dilip? Do you know?
You have to applaud, but if you're a member by virtue of your position, you hold the rights of a member. If you want to limit those rights, you have to have an additional clause that limits it. Otherwise, who could say which member can't?
Right.
One last thing, and the number 2, you in section 4, you combine the idea of reducing the number of board members with the reference that's in section 8. You should make reference to it there. Is it possible, is it necessary to break those 2 out? And like, for example, if I was willing to reduce the board but not have the language changed to the senior minister, I feel like if I prove one, I'm proving both.
At the time of the vote, you'll be able to vote regarding that matter, or you can also make a motion to table the vote.
That's true, but I think she said there were going to be 6 votes.
Will be.
And there are only, those 2 things are together.
We're going to vote on Article 1, Section 1, Article 1, Section 4, Article 2, Section 4, Article 2, Section 6, Article 3, Section 1, and Article 3, Section 3. So as you've stated, Article 2, Section 4 is the proposed bylaw change that you're speaking of, and the word "in addition" implies that the 2 are together. But the bylaw as written is as you stated. You would be approving both or not approving both. Ron wants to speak again.
Snuck up on me. I just want to respond to 2 things that Reverend Dave said. Number 1, as far as the nominating committee goes, he was saying, well, I may have knowledge about a person that you in the congregation don't have. That probably violates HIPAA and is a crime. There is, if he has confidential information, like my medical condition or something like that, that's privileged information, I'm sorry. But number 2, yeah, I knew I was going to get a response to that. And number 2, the current language, where am I? The current language says this, any called minister may attend any meeting of the board not held in executive session. That is the way we have been governed since this was put in. Yes, you can invite the called minister into the executive session, but they do not have an a priori right to be there, and I think we need to keep it that way.
I want to respond to an important thing. One, the code of confidentiality is a little bit different than HIPAA because of the kind of organization we are. So I don't disclose your private information to people. I'm saying that when your minister knows you for 10, 20 years, when your minister knows you, there's just some guidance around who is well suited with gifts to roles. And we can talk about that at length, but there's a kind of, in the sort of general construction of, I don't know, general democracy. I've been in a lot of churches where, you know, Jimmy hasn't done it yet, give it Jimmy's turn. And Jimmy's ill-suited to the roles. So I don't say it in any unkind way, but we do that all the time with like, no, don't give Jimmy to drive the truck. That's not releasing your medical information, and HIPAA doesn't govern me, the ministerial code of conduct. But if I know that Jimmy's not an appropriate pick to drive the truck, I'm going to gently say, I don't think Jimmy to drive the bus, right? So this is what goes on in consultation. The minister is not just a source of information. Your senior minister is your counselor, who's advising you. You know, who would be good to be the next president? This is a consultation, right? Who should we be pulling forward and developing? Who should be leading? Who should we be cultivating to teach Al? There's a thing, like, we make judgments all the time, seasoned judgments about who would be good an Al teacher. Trust me, it's a judgment you want. It's not about releasing somebody's data, but there are judgments made all the time. I would make your minister a trusted counselor. It really is an evolutionary difference between the churches that conceive of themselves as hiring the minister and overseeing their work, and the churches that conceive of shared ministry. The model is to elect people because that represents the body that changes through time. When you call a minister, and I'm not a called minister here, and John's not going to be a called minister, so it's a little different. When you call the minister, that has a sacred tenor in our tradition, and they're like the voice of perpetuity. They speak for the tradition. They speak above, hopefully, the winds of, I'm going to fire you next week, you need to say what we like. That was the whole structure of the call. It's like tenure in university. You expect them to speak with neither fear nor favor and be invited to the table. That's the structure of our tradition. You know, it's the Supreme Court versus the elected president. So that balance, and Leslie was saying it nice, you got to figure out. And in America, we seem to have broken it. But in general, you figure out, like, okay, what are the long-term voices? What are the voices that turn over as we grow the Sunday school? Like, as Carrie was saying, like, okay, we need new voices that speak to that change. And then you need some old, seasoned voice. So that's the kind of dialogue I'm talking about.
John Smith again. My hope is that we can sit back in our chairs and think about this not so much as a dangerous change, but a smart compromise. The congregation is the ultimate authority. The bylaws say that. All the committees have members of the church on them. They are the only voters in any and all of those committees. The notion that we would invite the ministers in to be part of a conversation seems to me to be reasonable and non-threatening. And for those of us who have been Unitarians around here for a long time, I don't think the members are going to let the gavel disappear in this kind of new arrangement. Thank you.
I would like to put my faith in the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees has proposed. Hi. I'd like to put my faith in the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees has proposed this change. They feel it would be good for our congregation. In a year, 2 years, they may say, hey, we made a mistake, let's change. But if they feel that this is what we should do, I propose that we approve this change.
I'm not going to take that as a motion to vote because we have not closed discussion. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Wright. I feel like there's a lot of different feelings about this in the room, and I recently came out of a contract thing with employer where I found that there were some parts that I really wished I had more protection in, and parts that I was glad were there. So I definitely agree that the board should be able to invite the minister in and have them there for a lot of things, but I want them to have the freedom to exclude the minister if they feel they need to. So I would suggest maybe on Article 2, Section 4, if we can split out that in addition part, and then I don't know if people want to go ahead and vote on Article 3, Section 3, or if they want to table that for more discussion about it, but that would be my part.
You know, I'm the chair of the governance committee that proposed all this. And 90% of the time, having the minister, and what we are considering in executive session, minister will be held. There may be 10% of the time, and the board can exclude the minister. This doesn't say that the minister has. We can ask the minister not to come in. Reverend Dave gave 3 examples when we are considering compensation, behavior by the minister, or something else. So it doesn't takes away our power to exclude him. But 95% of the time, it's good to have him there. So that's why we made the change.
Just a second. So we're going to have, everybody's going to get a chance to speak. I just asked that you ask to speak before you speak. So I think, Carrie, you're next.
Dilip, by what mechanism would you exclude the minister from a meeting?
Oh, we need the 2 microphones. Otherwise, we're going to be here a while.
The president has the authority to say the minister should not attend this executive session.
Can the president exclude any member at any time?
No, it's just the ex officio members.
Huh, I didn't see that in Robert's rules.
It's not at ours.
Any other discussion? Okay, there is a call for a vote, which we will do.
Make one request first.
We're going to do this the way we need to. So is there a motion to close discussion?
So moved.
There's a motion to close discussion. Second? Second. All those in favor of closing discussion? Aye. Opposed?
May I make a brief request this time?
It's a simple majority, so that discussion is closed. We're going to hear, yes?
At this point, and because I've been carrying a microphone for over an hour, I'd really like to thank Yasara specifically as president, certainly all of the board members and Dilip and staff for all the work that I know went into this and how hard it was. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right. At this time, we are going to ask for motions for each of the individual bylaws. Can I get a motion to proceed Article 1, Section 1? Oh, I'm sorry. That must be a typo. I'm reading it wrong. Article 4, Section 1, Authority. There's a motion. Do I get a second? All those in favor of Article 4, Section 1? Aye. Opposed? All right. And Ron, I apologize. That was probably inappropriate. You, during discussion, made a comment about wanting to postpone all of the bylaws, so I need to, okay. That wasn't what you meant? Thank you. All right, we'll move on. Article 4, Section 1 is approved. Article 4, Section 4, Notice of Meetings. Can I get a motion? I have a motion. Second? Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, Article 4, Section 4 is passed. Article 5, Section 4. Can I get a motion to proceed with the, I have a motion to proceed. Second? Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? I'd like to call for a vote by hand then for the counting. It's a simple majority, but I just want to make sure. All right, for those who voted nay. Okay, so it's a simple majority, so that passes. Actually, I think, Rich, it's 2/3, right? And we have 37 absentee votes that said yes, so just wanted to acknowledge the nays. So Article 5, Section 4 passes. Article 5, Section 6, board meetings. You have a motion to vote on this? Motion, thank you. Second? Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, Article 5, Section 6 passes. Article 8, Section 1. I have a motion to proceed with the vote. I have a motion. Second, please. Seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, Article 8, Section 1 passes. Article 8, Section 3. I have a motion to proceed with the vote. Thank you. Second. All right. Okay, Ron, I'll acknowledge.
I think this article is divisive, and
So, Ron, I just want a point of order. The discussion is closed. If you'd like to make a motion to table, then you can.
I move to indefinitely postpone.
Okay, indefinitely I won't accept, but you can ask to have the motion tabled.
Okay, I move to table the motion.
Is there a second? All those in favor of tabling Article 8, Section 3 to a future time? Opposed? Okay, we're going to have to do the physical count again. All those in favor, please stand up so the counters can see you clearly. I'm sorry, tabling. I'm addressing the motion to table. So those in favor of tabling the motion, please stand until you've been counted. Have the counters come up with a count? No, we're voting to table in favor. So there's 9. Okay, so then I need those who are opposed to tabling to please stand to be counted. I got way more than that. Okay. Okay, the motion to table to a future time, yes votes is 29, opposed is 52. It's a simple majority, so the motion to table did not pass, so we'll proceed with the next order of business, and that would be, I need a motion from someone to consider Article 8, Section 3. I have a motion to vote. Do I have a second? Okay, at this time we'll vote on this, Article 8, Section 3. All those in favor? Aye? Aye. Those opposed? Nay. We'll do the same thing. Those in favor, please stand to be counted. And Rich, can you come up for a minute? Okay. The absentee counts in 2/3 on this.
Yes, they definitely count toward this.
Okay, and those opposed? Sure.
The system is ableist, and if we have people here using walkers or wheelchairs, standing to get your vote counted is a violation of our principles.
All right, I apologize. For those of you who choose not to stand or do not want to stand for some reason or were unable, just please raise your hand. Make sure your vote gets counted. That's the important thing. I was trying to make it easy for the folks counting, and I didn't take into account that some people may not want to stand. I get that. Understand. Okay, I was conferring with Rich because we have 37 votes that were submitted by absentee ballot in favor of approving Article 8, Section 3. So when you add the absentee votes with those who counted, the results are 95 for and 32 opposed, so that motion carries as well. So that was that's all of the topics for the agenda today. I would like to have a motion to adjourn. I have a motion to adjourn, seconded. All those in favor of adjourning? All right, thank you. I know I'm the moderator, so I'm not really supposed to say anything else, but my professional and personal life is, sometimes decisions get made that you're not in favor of. But once a decision is made, the nice thing and the good thing to do is get behind it and support it, and make it work for everybody. Thank you. So our meeting is adjourned as at 1:20 p.m. Thank you so much.